Hey everybody, my name's Ed Trevors. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm an Anglican priest and I get to serve in the beautiful parish of Christchurch-Shelburne that sits on the ancestral and on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Have you all heard of something called Blue Christmas? Blue Christmas is a fairly new tradition that many churches are undertaking. It's a time when they gather in one form or another on the shortest day of the year, the day with the least amount of sun, which is generally December 21st. And they honor their pain. They honor their grief. They honor what they carry. Not as a way of letting it go, but as a way of recognizing it. Way of processing it. Today, I want to talk a little bit about processing grief because, as most of you are aware, this season, whether you're a Christian or not, this holiday season carries with it a lot of emotional energy. It carries with a lot of baggage. It triggers a lot of people. Most of us, almost all of us, have some memory, some powerful memory attached to a moment or moments or experiences during this season over the course of our lives. I'm a big fan of a book called The Grief Recovery Handbook. Now, I'm not trained, I'm not certified in their program, so what I'm going to say here is not a matter of process or practice. It's simply something that I gleaned from it. If you haven't read the Grief Recovery Handbook, I would encourage you to do so. While you might not think that you're carrying around a great deal of grief or that it's something that you need to process, it's still a very worthwhile read. It's a wonderful tool to have available for yourself and for your family and for your friends. If you have read it, you are indeed blessed. The thing I want to share with you today is that all grief is the result of change. Now, this is something that the book says, but all grief is the result of change. All change, whether it's good change or bad change, positive or negative, planned, or unexpected, all change brings with it some form, some amount of grief. The most blessed day of your life still brings with it some amount of change, which brings with it some amount of grief. Right? Grief is that we lament what was as we move into what now is. There's always something that we miss. There's always something that we don't really want to let go of, no matter what. 2020 has been a year of change. When I was in IT and we would get a call from one of our customers and they would say something crashed, the one thing that we'd always ask was, what happened just before? What did you do just before? What did you touch just before? What did you scan? What did you stop? What did you force? What did you see just before? Now, sometimes those questions came across as pretty blaming, pretty damning. Probably shouldn't have spoken that way. But the truth is, again, as an IT professional, in my case, I was a software engineer, I was interested in knowing what had happened just before that so that I could find in the code exactly the moment they were at. And then if I could recreate it using the change point that they described, I could quickly and easily solve the problem, most times. If I didn't have a change point, then I would have to look at the code from top to bottom. And that could be thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of lines and functions and features. Time-consuming, exhausting work. And so we would look for change points, that moment in time where we could pinpoint the source of our problem. 2020 is filled with change points. Absolutely chocked full, jam-packed, a wild ride, a roller coaster of change points. Some of those change points, a lot of them, are things that we can all relate to. Think of the many things that COVID-19 has ushered into our lives. The numerous changes that we see that COVID-19, that the pandemic and the restrictions and the regulations and all the things that we had to put in place in order to protect ourselves and our communities from it. Dozens and dozens of changes, dozens and dozens of change points. That's not even considering the loss of life. 1.7, 1.8 million people across the globe. How many people affected by those deaths? How many people affected by the economy, by the recession that the pandemic has ushered forward? What about the social unrest in our world? The Black Lives Matter movement, the fight for equality, the fight for justice. What about the election in the U.S. that the entire world has been watching, the entire world has been sitting on the edge of our seats watching? Stuff in our own nations, stuff in our own lives. I know I'm not even coming close to scratching the surface when it comes to the various number of change points that you and I have experienced over this last year. Well, if each one of those change points brings with it some amount of grief, and all grief should be honored and recognized, we might have some work to do. As we go through this season, this incredibly triggering season, I would encourage you to take moments of self-care, to be proactive, and allow yourself to contemplate and reflect on all the ways that your life has changed over the last 360 some odd days. Allow yourself to reflect on all those changes, on all the ways that your life has changed. Reflect on all that you were asked, all that you were forced to give up. Honoring our pain, honoring our grief, honoring our dashed expectations. This is good work. This is loving work. It's compassionate work. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, and may you always know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. I pray you will undertake this work, that you will be gentle with yourself, that you will be compassionate with yourself, that you will love yourself in this way. Amen.